What's going on, guys? Welcome to my video today. Today I'm going to talk about naturalism uses circular reasoning. And so yesterday I called a call-in show, an atheist run by atheists. It's called The Line, and it's the second time I called the show. And so my topic was that naturalism is circular, and basically what I told them was that the reason so many scientists claim that there's no evidence for God is because they hold to the philosophy of naturalism, which is the idea that all things in the universe must be explained through natural causes, and we must exclude all supernatural causes. It has to be natural. That supernatural causes are unscientific and pseudoscience, and there's no place for them in science. And so then they say that science is the only way to truth. And then they study the universe through the lens of their naturalistic view. And then they study everything through the lens that everything must be explained through natural laws. And then they say that there's no evidence for God. And I point out that it's their presuppositions that determine how they interpret the evidence for God. And then the guy, one of the guys basically said that scientists centuries ago, they were Christians then, but they didn't have presuppositions of naturalism or whatever, which is not true. Because you can believe that God created the universe. It depends on how you word it. Like the universe operates by natural laws or whatever. But anyway, like I said, that some people think that God, for God to exist in the universe, that the universe would have to be ran by magic, is what people think. They think that if God exists, everything has to be done by magic, and there's no kind of mechanism or anything. I'm talking about the origin of the universe. That was my whole point. How did everything get here? Not how it operates, not how you can explain it by looking at it, the mechanisms of it, but how did it get here? What is the origins of it? And it looks designed. You can look at it like everything was created. The universe, the origins of the universe can be explained by purely naturalistic processes, or that you can look for natural processes and also allow for the possibility of God, for the possibility of a designer, a creator. If you allow the two options and then you study the universe and you use inference to the best explanation, then God makes the most sense. And I'm going to explain how that is, but I never got to really get that far. So I started talking about, so these are my arguments that I mentioned. And this is how the conversation goes with an atheist. So the fine-tuning of the universe is that we have discovered that there's constants in the universe that are balanced very precisely, the measure, the strength of these constants. And they are... The odds are so low of it happening by chance. It's just basically impossible. So what they'll say is they'll believe in a multiverse. Some of them hold to a multiverse. This idea that there's this mechanism that generates an infinite number of universes. And so since we have an infinite number of universes, then this probability that seems impossible suddenly becomes more plausible. You got one constant that has the chances of that happening by chance, of getting 6 royal flushes dealt to you in a row. I'm talking about these odds are astronomically so low, it's basically impossible. But they deny it. They see that it's fine-tuned. And if they were honest and open to God, they would say, yeah, that looks like it was designed. We're not for sure, but that kind of looks like it's designed. But what do? They say, well, that doesn't prove that God made it. They could have been an infinite number of universes, and if we got an infinite number of universes, then it becomes possible. That's how they look at it. Or DNA, we discovered DNA, which functions like digital computer software code. Richard Dawkins says, quote, the machine code of the genes is uncannily computer-like, unquote. Francis Collins, the guy over the Human Genome Project, said, quote, DNA is something like the hard drive on your computer containing programming, unquote. And then Bill Gates said, quote, DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created, unquote. No man has ever designed a software program for computers that is as complex and amazing as DNA is. It functions just like a computer program, except computer program uses a binary system of zeros and ones, and DNA uses 4 chemicals, and it's represented by a letter, is how we represent that. And it's a code, it's a language that we have been able to decipher. And they believe that rose by chance, but then the machines also that read the code also rose by chance, and somehow it knows how to read that language. So the code came by chance, the machines that read it came by chance, and it, you know, if you got a deck of cards with different letters, eventually you can get a message after enough time. Let's say like I love you, eventually. But if you give that message to somebody that speaks a different language and doesn't know English, that message is not going to mean anything to them if you don't know how to speak that language. That's the same thing with DNA. It works like, so why would you not, if it's more complex than any computer software program ever designed, and it has workers, it has like enzymes that act like workers. One goes through the 2 strands and separates them. Others hold the ends of the strand down where they can't move. Another one stays where the 2 strands come apart to keep it from getting tangled up. Another one goes through and copies the code. And as it copies the code, it's checking for mistakes. And if it finds any mistakes, it corrects it. And then at the end, when it's done, it goes back over and proof checks it one more time to make sure that it didn't make any mistakes. And then it's got a worker that cuts out certain parts that don't need to be there when it gets sent to the program, the machines that read it. And then those workers cut those sections out, and then you got other workers that splices the sections back, the other parts back together. All these workers are doing all these things, and they don't have brains. How do these things know what to do? You already got a complex thing like DNA that's absolutely amazing, and then you got workers that all work together to help copy it and send it to machines that read it and build proteins. These machines read the code 3 letters at a time, and those 3 letters represent a code for a particular amino acid. There's 20 amino acids. It reads that code. It brings in the right amino acid. We have a chart. You can look at the chart online. We've deciphered the code for all possible combinations of all the 3 codons. Of all possible combinations, we know the code for each amino acid. And we also know the code. It's got a code for when it tells it to stop. It tells it, no more, that's done, wrap it up. There's a code for that. And you want to tell me that it's more logical to believe that rose by chance than a mind? See, what they'll do is say, it looks designed, it works like computer program, and but only it's not as complex, but it's more complex than the computer software program ever created. But then they'll come up with rescuing devices and say, well, that could have evolved by chance billions of years ago. It could, like the origin of life. They have no idea how life started. But they come up with, anybody can come up with a theory. Oh, there was some chemicals in a pond and lightning struck it and that's how life got here. And they're not able to demonstrate that. But they think that's plausible and they have no evidence for it. Because to them, anything is more plausible than God. No matter how ridiculous it sounds. And no matter how little evidence you have. It looks absolutely designed. And it's absolutely mind-blowing how well designed it is. And you can be open to say, hey man, that looks designed. That had to have been designed. That there's no way. Or you can have the attitude like, that's God of the gaps. We don't know that God done that. That could have arisen by chance and we haven't just discovered that yet. See, that's the mentality they have. They don't follow the evidence where it leads. They're not open to truth. I got one more example of the bacterial flagellum. It's basically a bacterium. And some of these have like a tail that propels them through liquid. And they have a mechanism. That tail is basically an electric motor. That tail does not wiggle. It rotates like a motor, like an electric motor. It has a rotor and a stator, a drive shaft, a universal joint, a propeller, rings, a clutch, and a braking system. It spins up to 100,000 revolutions per minute. It has a water-cooled motor. It has a forward and reverse. It runs at 100% efficiency, which is more efficient than any motor that we have ever made. That motor is better designed than any motor we have ever made and can make. And you telling me that doesn't look designed? And see, when I asked him that question, when I called into the show yesterday, I asked him, does it look, I explained all the parts to it, and which they've already heard the argument. And then I said, so let me ask you, does that look designed? And he dodged my question, and the other one started getting mad. See, the way it is at these shows, they get to control the conversation. They don't want to have any burden of proof. They don't want to have to answer any of your questions that could potentially get them in trouble. They don't want to put any pieces on the table, because once you put pieces on there, it's hard to take off and somebody can use it against you, against your position. So what they want to do is they want you to have the burden of proof. And when you start coming up with ideas, they're hoping that most people that call don't know as much as they do, and basically haven't studied this stuff at all, and they want to humiliate them is what they want to do. But when people, to their credit, they've been studying this stuff for a long time, and they're really good at philosophy and epistemology and studying science and all this, not to take that away. But they're smart, they're intelligent, but it's their presuppositions of there will never be enough evidence for the existence of God to some people. It don't matter if God spells his name out in the stars. Some people will say that they have chalked it up to madness. They'll think that they're hallucinating, that they've gone insane. They'll say that it could be intelligence aliens trying to trick us. And they'll tell you, and you can ask them, like Matt Dillahunty. People's asked him, what would it take to convince you? And he said, well, I don't know what it would take to convince me, but God would know, and it's his job to convince me. The Bible makes it plain, you know that God exists. God is evident through creation, like it says in Romans 1. People suppress the truth. Maybe they do it subconsciously. I think it more is kind of subconsciously. I think it kind of suits their fancy that God doesn't exist. Maybe some of them just are led astray by evolution and things like this, but really at the heart of it, people are looking for God like a thief or a criminal is looking for a cop when it comes down to it. We know that sin is wrong. We know that God would condemn that, and that we would have to live our lives for God. Anyway, I don't want to get too off topic. But So my next part of my next piece of evidence was the human eye. I didn't get to mention this, but this is one of the things I like to use. The human eye has 576 megapixels. Megapixels, has to do with how good a view it is, basically, how clear it is, or whatever. The human eye has 576 megapixels, and an iPhone camera has 48 megapixels. So the best iPhones cameras that they got right now has 48 megapixels compared to 576 megapixels. The human eye is auto-focusing. If you've ever looked through a pair of binoculars, you know that when you look at things at different distances, you have to adjust. You have a little knob that you adjust to focus it, depending on whatever distance that thing is. Your eyes, if you'll notice, when you're looking at something close up, the things further away will be blurry a little bit, if you think about it. But when you look further away, your eyes automatically focus to whatever you're concentrating on, and the other things are not in focus. But it doesn't affect your ability to see anything. It's only like when you really think about it and kind of do it as an experiment. But your eyes automatically focus, unlike binoculars that require that little focusing thing. Your eyes are so complex; they're irreducibly complex. Your eye has so many parts to it that all have to be there at the same time for it to work. There's no way that natural selection could cause that to happen by chance. I know they try to come up with these crazy theories, but they can't demonstrate it other than just saying what might have, this little light sensitive cell probably formed, and then these nerves formed going to the brain, and then the heart, these blood vessels just accidentally went to the eye and allowed blood, and then all these rods and cones and the retina and lens and all these different things just slowly. Anybody can come up with a story explaining how something, a fairy tale story. Demonstrate that. You ain't got any evidence that evolved like that. I mean, the most logical thing is to see how amazingly complex and how designed the eye is, how designed looking it is, and then say, "Wow, man, that's amazing! Somebody had to have designed that." Like even the eye, we got technology with iPhone cameras that don't even have nowhere near the megapixels that eyes do. That sure looks like that had a creator. But what did they do? They had the attitude like, well, you can't prove that God done that. That could have, even though we don't know exactly how it happened through evolution, through billions of years, and by chance, through mutations and natural selections. Even though they have zero evidence that mutations and natural selection has any creative power whatsoever. There's no evidence of that. All the evidence we have that mutations, it can sometimes provide beneficial things like bacteria developing resistance to antibiotics. But what it's doing is breaking. It's losing information. The genes are breaking. It can't survive as good as normal bacteria in normal conditions. It can only survive better than normal bacteria under the conditions of being exposed to a lot of antibiotics. They're not able to demonstrate this stuff. They just come up with these crazy theories trying to explain these things that are obviously that look like they're designed. And you can always come up with an explanation. You can always dismiss something. You can come up with these crazy theories, or you could just say, well, we don't know. That's what a lot of them do, is say, well, we don't know. There's nothing wrong with saying we don't know, but we're not going to do a God of the gaps and say, well, therefore we don't know, therefore God done it. It's not the information that we don't know, it's what we do know. And what we do know is these things look like they're designed. The universe being fine-tuned, the odds of that happening by chance, even scientists admit that. Like Sir Fred Hoyle, that changed his view and converted him out of the atheism. I know Antony Flew, I read part of his book. these discoveries led him out of it, because he said he followed the evidence where it led. If you're not open to the possibility of God and you only accept natural causes, it don't matter what kind of evidence you got. You can have a fine-tuned universe with odds so improbable that it's impossible, and then you can just come up with rescuing devices like a multiverse, or say that it's necessary, which that implies design. That would imply that it has a purpose or goal. If the universe is a random and there's no purpose, why couldn't gravity have been a little bit weaker and a little bit stronger? And like, I'm trying to remember, the dude in the wheelchair, I can't even think of his name right now. Stephen Hawking, like he said, if gravity were just a little bit weaker, a little bit stronger, and I'm talking about in a magnitude so small that it's unbelievably small. If it had moved in either direction, a little bit stronger, a little bit weaker, the universe would either expanded too quickly or collapsed in on itself or whatever. The universe would not have been able to exist according to their mechanisms of how the Big Bang Theory and how it would have happened by natural processes. Admit, look, man, these odds are insanely. They're so low that it makes it improbable. That's how low they are. It looks designed. It looks like somebody fine-tuned them that way. And they just explain it in a way with a multiverse that there's no evidence for, and there's no way that we could possibly know, because it's not in this universe. And it's out of the realm of science. DNA, I'm just going to recap over this real quick. DNA, that is like a computer software program, but far more advanced than any program man has ever designed. Absolutely amazing. It looks like it was designed, but you can just explain it away and say that it formed by chance over billions of years ago. Bacterial flagellum runs an electric motor, runs at 100% efficiency, better than any motor than we can design. It looks designed. They explain it away. The eye, they explain it away. It don't matter what kind of evidence. It don't matter how strong the evidence is. They can always explain it away. It's simple just to say, we don't know how it happened, but we're not going to say that God done it just because we don't know, because they're not open to the possibility of God. And that's what it boils down to. And like I said, these call-in shows, they don't want any kind of burden of proof. They don't want to have to answer your questions. When I asked them, did it look designed? He knew right then that I was about to lay a trap down, and he didn't want no part of it. See, they ask you a question, and they want you to answer yes or no. And when you don't answer it like they want you to, they get angry. And then they start cussing. And then they mute you. And then sometimes they hang up on you. Answer this. I asked you this question. Why ain't, But when you ask them a question, they will not answer your question at all. They deflect back to the most recent thing that y'all were talking about that they feel the most comfortable discussing. When you start talking about another topic that it seems like you know what you're talking about and they don't really know how to respond, well, let's go back to what you was talking about a while ago, something that they feel better at talking about. They don't want any kind of burden of proof. And they do not want to answer. See, when I asked him, does it look designed? He knows that common sense tells you that it looks designed. Then I would have followed it up with, well, if it looks designed, how do you know that it's not designed? Why do you rule out the possibility of design? If it looks designed, if it walks like a duck, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, why would we think it's not a duck? I would start leading a bunch of questions to them. I would have to put a burden on them that they would kind of have to explain their view, because they have a worldview like us. See, but they're cowards. They don't want to answer the questions of the caller. They don't want no burden of proof. They don't want to have to put any pieces on the table. They want us to do all that. And then they want to try, that they're hoping that they get callers that have not studied this, that has weak logic, and they want to embarrass people. But when people call and try to use the Socratic method on them and get them to answer questions, they get angry and they dodge your questions. They're cowards and they're dishonest. And that's how they're able to do those shows, is because they control the conversation. They know this stuff inside and out because they've been studying it for a long time. But there's also other people that are equal to them that have equal knowledge. But most of them don't call shows like this because they know it's pointless. And I know it's pointless, but I was doing it for the experience. It's very nerve-wracking calling a show like that with people listening live. I did it for the experience, not to convert anybody. I just did it for my experience and practice of defending my worldview. But there, like I said, if you have a certain mentality that we must always use natural causes and we must exclude supernatural causes because it's unscientific, and then you interpret everything in the universe through those eyes of naturalism, and you're not open to God, there's not enough evidence that will ever convince you. You've already seen the evidence for God, but you reject it. You come up with rescuing devices. Your common sense tells you that it was designed, but you just dismiss it and reject it, even though you know it looks designed. It's more logical and rational to look at all these things in nature and to see the universe. We've discovered that the universe actually got a beginning. They used to think that it was eternal, so therefore it didn't need a cause. Now we discovered that it's not eternal. That it must have a cause. That's common sense. It cannot cause itself. Nothing can be the cause of itself because it didn't exist to begin with. I couldn't create myself because I didn't exist. It doesn't make sense that you can't say that nature had anything to do with the universe coming into existence, because nature did not exist. The laws of nature did not exist. Gases and elements and all this stuff did not exist. Time, space, matter did not exist. No science, no nature at all existed at one point. And then everything came into existence. And it has order. And it has design. It looks designed, rather. And some of the probability of it happening by chance is so astronomically low that it's impossible. You can get improbability so low that it becomes impossible. And that's how it is with the universe. But you need to realize it's not the evidence. It's not that there's lack of evidence for God. There's sufficient evidence for God. It's their presuppositions about reality and them not being open to the possibility of God. Because if you allowed the possibility of God and natural causes and you studied all this stuff, you would realize that a God, a creator, best explains this over it happening by chance. God best explains this. That's the most logical thing. I don't know what exactly the creator looks like. I don't know much about him other than he's pretty smart and he exists. He transcends time, space, and matter. He's very, very intelligent and he's very, very powerful, and he can create things. He can do like supernatural things. He can create things like universes and matter out of essentially nothing. He can do that. I don't have to know what his name is. I got enough common sense to know that there's a creator that created this universe, and that God best explains the universe. Guys, thanks for watching my video today. I know I get to rambling sometimes, but thanks for watching my video. I got more videos coming. God bless y'all. Have a great day.